Welcome to the new Superversive SF live stream. Today we're talking about Thanksgiving in science fiction, and to introduce the topic, the lovely L. Judgy Lamplighter. Right.
Hello, everybody. I'll say something briefly on the topic, and then I'll pass it on to everyone else to introduce themselves. There is a book called When the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lowe, I think is the name and the author. It's a children's book based on Chinese mythology about a young girl who's living in hard situations, and she and her goldfish have various adventures. And part of the story is that there was a town, a lost town, that had the secret of happiness. And as the story goes along, you discover that the secret of happiness is written on a piece of paper and that it's one word. And I remember as I was reading the book thinking, you know, what a chip, you know, they're going to get to the secret of happiness. It's going to be something dumb, you know. But when she actually finds out what it is, the word was thankfulness. And the idea that this town could be happy if everybody was thankful and had gratitude really struck me, because I thought, you know, she may be right about that.
Probably true.
And so that's really stayed with me since I read that book. And I thought, in honor of Thanksgiving, that we could take some time to talk about gratitude towards books, towards authors, towards each other, towards the world. Lift our thoughts away from some of the, you know, upsetting and grousing things that have been going on for a while. So turn it over to the rest of you to introduce yourselves.
Well, you have to say in what order we should introduce ourselves, otherwise everyone will speak at once.
Since if the order I see on my screen is going to be different from the order on other screens, there's no real way to do it. So why don't you go first, John, and then hand it off to someone else.
Well, someone has to say in what order they should be.
You may say it.
Okay.
Go next, then hand it off to someone.
First, I think the youngest person here should introduce herself.
Okay. Hello, I'm April Freeman, resident dancing girl and leader of the cheer team. I have a lot of imaginary friends that won't leave me alone, and so therefore I must be an author. And I'm happy to be here with all you other crazy people like me.
Next, anyone here who's written a book called Ethereal?
Broad category.
Wait, we can't hear you now. We've lost you.
Brian, are you there?
When his mic comes back on. Brian, introduce yourself, unless there's more than one Brian here.
Guys, good afternoon. This is Brian Niemeyer. I am the author of Ethereal and Dragon Award-winning novel for Best Horror Novel, Soul Dancer. And soon, coming soon, as soon as Judgy has edited it and the cover's been finalized, Soul Cycle Book 3, The Secret Kings, which is on track for Christmas release.
Unfortunately, we're losing your audio channel, so we're going to cut off your introduction. The artist formerly known as Daddy Warpig, who to this day I do not know his real name. Introduce yourself. I've forgotten it. I don't know real names. I don't do real.
It's similar to mine, but spelt wrong.
I don't know your name either. You're just a voice. Why am I doing the introductions? I'm the worst person to do introductions ever. I only remember people. I remember you played a role-playing game. Okay.
Pass it off to the next person. You don't have to introduce everybody. Just pass it off.
Too late.
Pass it to Josh or Tom.
Artist formerly known as Daddy Warpig. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Daddy Warpig, and I am not particularly known for having written anything except a lot of very inflammatory tweets.
And Gamergate to save the world. I'll remind you. Thank you, Gamergaters. Because if it hadn't been Gamergate,
he does Geek Gab, right?
Yes, I do Geek Gab with Brian, and we're having our live show after this one's over. So,
and it'll be a lot better than this one because I won't be.
5:30 Eastern Time, Geek Gab. I posted the announcement on Gab. I posted it on Twitter. I posted it on Facebook. So, you know.
Excellent. Death to Twitter. Anyone whose name is not normal, like Declan, which sounds either Irish or quantified. Introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Declan Finn, author of the Dragon Award nominated book for Best Horror, Honor at Stake. I got beaten out by someone named Niemeyer. Never heard of him.
German.
Yes. Believe it or not, the sequel to that came out last week, and I've got a book coming out on Monday called Set to Kill, where I have a whole bunch of people who don't look anything like real-life counterparts. You know, they're called the Tearful Puppies. You know. And of course, there's a Papa War Pig in there, you know. Sorry, Warhog. Warhog. Must remember that. You know, and other people who look nothing like anybody in real life. Honest.
That's right.
Only managed to read the first few chapters, but so far it's quite entertaining.
Well, it's supposed to be a comedy.
Father Battle Swine in it too. It's going to be a tradition. Okay. Anyone named after a Greek hero like Jason, introduce yourself next.
That's actually two of us.
Go ahead. Let's talk at once.
That's Daddy Warpig's name. Yes, hello, I'm Jason Rennie. You've obviously heard of me before. I'm the editor of Sci-Fi Journal, and
Yay.
I'm, I don't know, the organizing force behind Superversive Press at this point when I have time.
Yay.
And looking for some way to replace my 40-hour-a-week job. So I don't travel much. But yes, so
I'm
I'm
for the job, not for the replacing. I also am not a full-time writer yet. It embarrasses me.
But and yes, I've never written any books. I've tried writing short fiction. I'm really bad at it.
Well,
It's absolutely horrible, and I would never.
You can win the new revised Hugo Award with that. Just put up some white bashing, you'll be fine.
No, I think I'd still
Josh,
lose.
who is named after the first half of Joshua's name. Please introduce yourself. Could be, but
Hey, I am Joshua Young. I am the author of about half a dozen short stories, a couple of which in the Sci-Fi Journal.
I bought his first one.
You did,
yay.
and I have a novel coming out at some point. I'm attempting the grand experiment of writing a novel and going to seminary at the same time, so it's very slow going. But that'll be
amen.
Do Buddhas Dream of Enlightened Sheep? Hopefully this year, next year, 2017.
Okay, and there's someone whose name I can't pronounce, Yogli, Yagi. Tom, the sane one, the normal person. Talk.
There's the same person here?
Okay, you'll have to do
Sanity is allowed?
Tom is too shy. I would introduce Tom Simon. Tom Simon
Okay,
is
go
one of the foremost essayists of this day and age, and he's also written some fantasy novels that are quite
John,
good.
ask him about his new work that just came out.
What about your new work that just come out?
Funny you should ask that. I'm making an experiment in writing a serial, and the first installment just came out yesterday and is available exclusively on an Amazon near you. The series is called Where Angels Die, and it has points of resemblance with the kind of good old-fashioned pulp fiction that you all know and love, because it's basically a story about demon hunting, killer, paladin, exorcist psychiatrists. And the souls that they separate from their possessors. And I think a lot more people should go out and look it up and buy it. You can find more information on my site, bonbon.com.
Say the name again, please, for our listening audience.
It's When Angels Die, right?
Where Angels Die. And if you go to Bond like in James, wine like you drink, bondwine.com, you can find out all about it.
Sounds good.
The next person to introduce himself is me. My name is John C. Wright. I am a professional blowhard, screed writer, philosopher, and mystic. I once won a Dragon Award, but only because I threatened people. But I'm
You
very
missed
good.
Ben. You can't miss Ben.
What's that?
You missed Ben. Zvitsky. I said it right first time.
I'm sorry, I did
Yes,
miss
you
that.
did.
Ben, introduce yourself, please. How did I miss you?
Because I'm quiet. That's why.
Maybe you jumped
No,
out.
I
Yeah.
skipped him because I couldn't hear him. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead again. Try again.
Okay, I'm Ben Zvitsky. I'm English expat living in the Czech Republic. I have 2 novels out and 2 poetry collections, and I got my big break from Sci-Fi Journal with Jason. And I wheedled my way into his secret society and have become his right-hand man.
Whoa!
Do all his dirty work. And I'm very proud to be part of this group.
Happy to help.
Now, I think you and Jaji should discuss having names no one can pronounce, because that's one thing you have in common.
We have a secret organization. We understand each other.
We have cool names. That's the point. We have cool names.
Okay, back over
I'm
to you,
only a
Ben,
month.
because you're in charge of the conversation now about gratitude.
I'm a cat.
Oh, just for everyone listening,
Wait,
you
what?
can get Tom's new book for 99 cents on Amazon now, and if you check the Superversive SF page in a couple of minutes when I'm finished editing it, there'll be links there.
Excellent.
99 cents is the magic price.
Good price. I will share it once it's up there.
Before we talk about fiction,
Yep.
I have a short mental essay I keep in the back of my mind about gratitude. And so if I could take a couple of minutes, I'd like to give it, because that's my one main contribution so far.
Right on topic. Go ahead.
Gratitude is gratitude not just to people you know, but also gratitude towards God. Helps do two things. It does make you happier because it lets you see all the good things in your life. And knowing that there are good things in your life wards off despair and depression and things like that. And the difficulty with modern culture is that virtually everyone who has gone wrong, has become a Morlock, lacks gratitude. They have a toxic case of ingratitude. Gratitude requires humility. You can't be grateful for something without being humble, because you have to acknowledge that you are in the debt of another human being. And in an age where humility is the antithesis of popular culture and the common parlance of today's left, you can't be grateful because you can't be humble, because being humble is bad. And gratitude is something, if you look at Marxism, if you look at cultural Marxism, the entire complex of thoughts and beliefs surrounding it are a mass of complicated reasons to be ungrateful, to where you are born in the wealthiest civilization that has ever been on the face of the planet. You are born with more privilege than just about anyone living, whether you are male or female, white or black, or any other ethnicity, whether you're straight or gay. You have more. You've been given more just by being born American or Canadian or British or German or French than virtually anyone living nowadays and the entirety of the human race. Before 1950, you have been given more. And so you have to teach people to be this ungrateful. And cultural Marxism and Marxism is a mass of reasons, a mass of excuses for people who should be stunned at their fortune and be completely grateful at what they've been given. It's an excuse for them to be ungrateful, and lack of gratitude makes you unhappy because you can't remember the good things you have, or you refuse to see them as good. And that is why misery is so common nowadays, is because people lack gratitude.
Hear, hear. Amen.
Well, I think we can all go home now.
I think that sums it up beautifully.
Sorry, just so people know, I will be monitoring the chat in a second when I get it open.
Excellent.
Because we figured that out last time.
I think you summed up very well something that I was thinking about quite a bit recently, which was how intolerance is the opposite of gratitude in every way.
Yes.
You know, when you receive charity, you're supposed to be grateful, but when the government gives you something you're entitled to, you
just want more.
Yeah, you just want more, and you are indignant if you don't get it, or if you don't get it exactly the way you want it. While if you realize you were being given it, you might be more grateful.
I'm going to get a little bit personal, and I apologize. That was the first time I realized that there was something wrong with John Scalzi. he was talking about as a little kid how he was poor or whatever, and how people would give him stuff, and he was resentful even as an adult because they would expect him to be grateful. I'm like, why is that a cause of resentment that people, shouldn't you be grateful if people give you things?
Yeah. Now, I guess if they give you something you don't want, you might, be annoyed. But if they're giving you things that you want or need, yeah, you should be grateful because you're not entitled to them. And in America, what they're calling entitlements is taking money from people who are hardworking and giving it to someone else. It would be nice if the people receiving it were grateful for the hard work of the people who earned it.
Yeah. But they put this middleman in the middle to take away the face of that gift, to make it a faceless number, a faceless object, rather than an actual personal gift.
And make it seem like it can just giving and giving.
And they don't think of it as a gift. They think of it as stolen property being returned to them. They think what's yours is theirs.
But I can't hardly think of things I've seen in life more indignant than people who are trying to get things from the government and who are complaining about not getting some program or other. They seem to be almost a caricature of the opposite of gratitude. What I see in my mind when I think about the opposite of this is, I don't know, have any of you seen the movie Cinderella Man?
Yes, I love it. It's an excellent movie.
Yeah, and it has Russell Crowe playing a boxer in the 30s. And what struck me about that movie, I enjoyed it because my grandfather actually taught boxers during that period. But he actually met one of the guys who appears as a character in the movie. But the thing that really struck me is when the young man takes money being given out from the government in the 30s during the Depression, he pays it back. He insists on paying back the government. He goes back to the agency that gave him the money, and he pays it back once he makes good. And when did that used to be an American virtue, that we thought we needed to be independent, that we thought that we should stand on our own, that we would, be the kind of person who would pay back money. And I was thinking, when did we lose that?
1960s.
And I thought we lost it again to think we were entitled. Go ahead, April.
One thing, this is something my dad has noticed and pointed out to me, with, say, like the Black communities where they're kind of held under the welfare system. And he pointed out to me one time that if you look back when it all started, when the whole kind of welfare system started, there was a lot, the men and women back then, it would be like, okay, we'll accept this and everything. And they didn't really want to, but they needed it, so they did. And then it's been generations and generations and generations. And so that's all the people growing up in that, like, generation after generation, that you lose that kind of sense of dignity of doing it on your own. And then so they don't really have that concept of really having that pride in working and be able to take care of yourself. And so when someone comes in and says, no, we're going to take away this system, so, because I mean, it's a repressive system, but someone comes in and says, oh, I'm going to take this away, the people living in that, they don't really understand. That's all they know. So they get freaked out, like, no, you're going to take this away? Like, I need this, because they don't properly understand that pride and dignity and being able to support yourself.
My stepmother-in-law used to be a teacher, and she was teaching disadvantaged children. And these were up in northern New York, so they were mainly white children. But the human condition is the same in every color and place and religious and group and all. She found it was very hard to motivate them, because she would say, you need to learn these things to have a good life and get a good job. And they'd say, my dad just sits around drinking beer, watching TV, because he was on welfare. So why do I need to do anything, And it was a really hard thing for her to counter.
And the sense of entitlement overlaps just from the economic field of people feeling they're entitled to money to all sorts of things these days. The people who've been raised to get a participation trophy, a trophy for every endeavor they enter, whether they succeed or fail, have no concept of failure, no concept of success. The only concept they have is that a higher power will, by its grace, give them something that somehow they deserve just by breathing here on the planet. So they feel they deserve everything, and obviously they get less than they feel they deserve. So they're always ungrateful, they're always complaining, and they're always complaining as if they expect someone else to solve the problem for them. If a woman is a feminist and she complains that men should give her more dignity, power, wealth, or position, that's different from a feminist who says, I will earn these things for myself, please get out of my way. See the difference between the two mindsets?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
J.K. Rowling, the author, made $1 billion, but in order to do that, she went on the dole in Britain for a year. But since she made $1 billion, she gave $250 million of it, 25% of her net worth, away to charity.
Wow.
I've seen that, yeah.
And so I think when you're talking about Cinderella Man, I think that J.K. Rowling is an example of someone who, I don't know how grateful she was for having that available to be able to write her book without working, but she definitely gave back to Great Britain. She gave back to the society that made that possible for her.
And that's over and above their 99% tax rate.
See, you joke, but actually they used to have 104% top marginal tax rate, I think after World War II, and you got a lot of English immigrants in the US as a result.
Yes, how exactly do you pay 104%?
Better hope for some write-offs.
But yeah, that's what it was. Just as a side note, we've had a few suggestions for future episode ideas from people in the chat, and I'll be collecting those. A couple of them did comment incidentally about, a couple of people don't like John's characterization of the social justice types as Morlocks, suggesting actually they seem a lot more like Eloy, although someone did make the good point that Tumblerinas are Eloy.
That's because no one understands my characterization, which is actually meant to be a little subtle. The Morlocks are the ones the Eloy
That's where you went wrong.
Upon. Both the future people, because all these people pretend to be future people, all they pretend to be progressives. But the real progress is going to be toward the degeneration foreseen by H.G. Wells. The Morlocks are the guys who eat the Eloy, but the Eloy are part of the problem too, and they're part of the system. The Eloy, the guys who don't work but who feel they're entitled to everything, do get all this free stuff from the Morlocks, so they consume them. The social justice warriors are both of them. The Morlocks are merely the ones in charge of the social justice warrior movement.
There you go.
The Eloy are the ones who believe them and follow them.
My problem with that is that the Morlocks always struck me as people with a work ethic. So it always seemed to be a bit of a mismatch.
Well, the leaders of the social justice movement do stay up working hard and put in 80-hour work weeks in order to, but they don't do work. What they do is they write things, do their mind control, teach the young, influence the courts of law, and tell the people in Hollywood what to make. I mean, there's a lot of furious activity that goes on to undermine and subvert a society, especially as quickly as they've undermined and subverted ours. I mean, the communists took over 3/4 of the world in one generation. That's a lot of work. They do stuff. It's just underground because they're Morlocks.
By the way, in the interest of gratitude, I think it was actually Marina who came up with the idea of gratitude as the topic for this month.
Yeah. I think it was like I said something like we should do something about a holiday, and then it was Marina and John J. that were like, "Ooh, gratitude, Thanksgiving, kind of thing."
Yeah, it was a mix, as I remember, of April and Marina who came up with the idea of doing Thanksgiving and making it about gratitude. So just wanted to express my gratitude for them.
Huzzah!
Okay. Since we're talking about gratitude,
exactly. It seems wrong to take credit.
April got it. You blame April because Marina is.
John had a.
Oh, don't blame me.
we were discussing in the car as we were rushing back here, how to talk about science fiction and gratitude. And one idea John had was, well, maybe we could just take some time to express gratitude for some of the authors and stories that have led us to be where we are today. Either, led us to our love of the field, or who led as writers or as editors or whatever, led us to our current state. So I thought that might be a fun thing.
I can start by saying I know all what authors led me to this exact spot at this exact moment, which is John and Jaje. Because if I hadn't found your books, I would have started talking to you. Then I would have started hanging out with all you guys, so I wouldn't be here. So thank you for your awesome books. And as the official leader of the cheer team, it is my duty to always talk about you guys when I can.
On my part, I'm very grateful to have anyone read my books. To have a fan is just quite a surprise. 5, is that many? Wow. The guy I'm grateful to the most is an author named Davy Van Vogt, who back in the day, in the John W. Campbell Jr. period of science fiction history, which is before all y'all's time, because it's before my time too, he was one of the big 3 authors. It was him, Isaac Asimov, and Bob Heinlein, who were the backbone of Analog Magazine, which was called Amazing Magazine back then. And some people credit his short story, The Blackest Story, as being the thing that triggered the what is now called the golden age of science fiction. The time when it stopped being just pulp stories and started having a little bit of scientific flavoring thrown into the mix. And this guy wrote a book called The World of Null A, which was one of the first science fiction books I had read. And it was certainly the first science fiction book where the main characters, the protagonist's heroic quality, his superpower, was not that he was stronger or faster or smarter than his opponents, but that his philosophy was more coherent and correct. It was a philosophy called non-Aristotelian philosophy, Null A philosophy. And I wrote my entrance exam for St. John's College on that book. So it's one of the things that got me interested in philosophy, which got me into the school I went to, which has since formed my basic character and my basic interests from that day to this. So I have an immense gratitude, a debt to Van Vogt. I also owe an immense gratitude toward Mr. David Hartwell, may he rest in peace, of Tor Books, who allowed me to write the authorized sequel, Null A Continuum, which otherwise no one would have done. I'm also grateful to the widow, to Lydia Van Vogt, who allowed me to do it. So I have
That is a darn good book.
I have a lot of debts that I owe to not just that author who formed the basic way I approach science fiction, but also to Olaf Stapleton, who I steal ideas from Roger Zelazny, who I steal ideas from all these victims of my endless thefts and crimes. I mean, you can tell what authors I like by seeing who I'm ripping off in my book. Jack Vance. I mean, I can't even believe how I don't think I'd be interested in the field if it weren't for Jack Vance. I don't think I'd read science fiction.
I had to do
Ursula K. Le Guin. She did some brilliant work earlier in her career, and I owe her a great debt also. So I could go on. I could go on down my entire bookshelf.
We did have a...
There's a good one. Lynn Carter is a guy I owe a great debt to, and he's not even a writer. Well, he's a writer, but his editing. He's the one who put together the Valentine adult fantasy novel series, which in the days right after Tolkien was the thing that introduced modern fantasy to the reading public. And fantasy would not be where it is today were it not for his effort. So there's another guy.
John wrote his essay for St. John's on Null A. I wrote mine on Lloyd Alexander, Book of 3, who may be one of my absolute top favorite authors, and who if you had to me, what authors do you want to write like? I want to write like Roger Zelazny and Lloyd Alexander. So I was just utterly delighted when one of the very first readers of the Prospero books described it as Neil Gaiman meets C.S. Lewis, or for American version, Roger Zelazny meets Lloyd Alexander. And
Nice.
so I just utterly love his books. I think it was particularly his Prydain books. I've read a lot of his other books, but the Prydain ones have these light, kind of cheerful characters and conversations in the midst of stories that have, a real more depth and heart to them.
So I'm
And
trying to.
that I love. I think that's so wonderful.
So I'm trying to picture this. Princess Elanwy of Amber. I'm not talking to you, Corn of Amber.
Yeah, it's
Or
like that.
Gorgie. The pattern is filled with sparkings and burning.
No. If you want to picture what it would be like, just read anything I've written. Read Mephisto talking to Erasmus and Miranda, and you'll see exactly what it would be like.
It's really odd because I made up Mephisto.
I realize that, but you made him up in an amber background.
Yes,
He
Gorgie
have-
like a Lloyd Alexander character. So.
He's Gorgie and Dolly of Amber.
But there's a couple of other authors who are not that well known who I really feel grateful to because they were someone who really touched me in my youth. And two of them would be Alan Gardner, who wrote Weirson of Brisingamen and Moon of Gomerath, and Patricia McKillip, who wrote Forgotten Beasts of Elm and The Riddle Masters of Head. And those are both books that when I reread Weirson of Brisingamen or Riddle Master of Head, I go, oh, that's where I got that idea about how magic works. That's where I got that idea about what elves are like, things like that. And it's really kind of neat to go back and see it. And so, I think it's important to express this gratitude, both to thank them for the wonderful work they did, but also to remind us as writers that even those of us who don't go on to be household names may really be touching someone's heart and affecting their whole life.
We did have a suggestion from the chat from the person who corrected John the other day, Scholar at Arms, apparently. He suggested we should all express gratitude for the Scalzies of the SF world who inspire us all to do it better.
Hey, I would actually like to thank the various and sundry puppy kickers out there, because one of the reasons I suspect the only reason I even got nominated for a Dragon Award was because I had about around 100 followers, because I wrote an entire series of vignettes making fun of the weirdos. So, sad puppies bite back. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to do this one weird little thing making fun of some of these idiots. And it's like, hi, can you do more? Okay, one more. Hey, more. This person? Okay, fine. Just one more.
Declan, I don't think I've ever told you.
Oh?
That the first one of yours I read, I think, was it Peter Grant? You did Peter Grant, right?
Yes, I was actually recommended.
Okay, the first one I read, I didn't know it was a story. I thought it had happened, and you were writing a news. And I was like, "Oh my God, John, look what happened!" And then I figured it out. It's a story. But I come upon it like through a news feed or something, and I was completely shocked that they had done such a thing. And in my defense, some crazy things have happened in the last few years, so it's really hard to tell what's real anymore.
Don't worry, I understand this completely. The Onion looks more realistic than most normal headlines.
I've heard that in China they often or occasionally quote the renowned American newspaper, The Onion.
Of course they do. Don't worry, I've actually had the friends and nutcases over at the website that shall not be named, file 666 or something, where people were looking at it as, oh, these are death threats against puppy kickers. It's like, guys, this is a parody, and two, most of you idiots aren't even named. What are you smoking?
So I think I need to say something in favor of John Scalzi. And as a friend of mine recently read the book Red Shirts, and he really loved it. He said, this is the best thing I've read in a couple of years. So I thought, he made a good friend of mine happy, and I'm grateful for that.
I will point out that Old Man's War is a perfectly fine midlist kind of book.
I'm just saying, it's better
I'm
if we
agreeing
walk
with
each
you.
other with a sense of fun rather than with a sense of cruelty.
Oh, there is no denying that John Scalzi had, or at least had, some talent. He might still have it, but since I remember initially hearing about him back in college about, I want to say 10 years ago now, where, Old Man's War, this book is awesome, and it was recommended by Instapundit and libertarians and et cetera, and then it became, he fell down the rabbit hole of SJW-dom, or became a Morlock, and it's, Okay, well, now I'm going to take
This
every
is a
fan
man
of mine and screw
who
them.
was first known for taping bacon to his cat.
What?
Yes.
There was a video online that I believe came from him on his whatever blog where he had taped a piece of bacon to his cat and the cat was chasing it around. The first video that John and I saw was his daughter, 5-year-old daughter, in tears because Scott Westerfield was a Pluto hater. And she was, and at that time, John and John Scialzi had a brotherhood of people defending Pluto. You know, I've always been a little sad that broke up. I like those days.
I can look. John Scialzi has never offended me. Okay, he's offended my publisher, who offends and is offended by many people, and he's offended some of my friends. But I myself have no enmity toward the guy. I think the guy's pretty funny. You know, his 1 or 2 books I've read were I thought were good. I didn't think they were great. So
I've enjoyed him more
I don't
often
have to pay
than not.
attention to his, look. I don't expect readers to pay attention to my politics when they read my books. So I don't think we need to pay attention to his politics when we read his books. So, you know, live and let live is what I say. But crush the Hugos because they betrayed us.
You know, the only thing I dislike so far in what I've
sure.
been reading...
The awards should mean something, and that is being given away for political reasons, so we should do our best to nominate Chuck Tingle again next year until the Hugos are completely obliterated.
The only thing
But I don't feel any energy toward Mr. Scialzi. He's never offended me.
The only
It's
thing
really science fiction, but, you know, what the heck.
I haven't liked so far in Declan's Set to Kill is that the Hubble is such a good name for an award that it seems shame to use it on the Hugo now. You should start an award and call it the Hubble.
That's right.
Well, we've got a design for it on the cover.
Yeah, that is nice. It would also be the only award that ever came out of a science fiction story. I mean...
Yeah, that's right.
What better award for science fiction than a name that came out of science fiction?
Yeah, than a make-believe award.
The make-believe version of the Hugo. It would be really funny. Well, Tom,
Wait, no, what we need...
Wonderful...
What we need is an Oscar award, but for fictional characters, where the fictional characters go up and give each other Oscar awards.
Well, that would be
I nominated Sister Crossroad.
I have an author I would like to express gratitude towards. Jeffro Johnson.
Yes.
You're here.
Yes.
Who and I'm certain most of the people listening to this podcast know who Jeffro is. For those of you who don't, Jeffro wrote a long series of reviews of the authors in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Appendix N, which is a list of the fictional works that Gary Gygax, and I mean this in the best possible way, this is not meant as a slam at all, that Gary Gygax ripped off to get elements for Dungeons & Dragons. And so when you talk about trolls that regenerate but can only be defeated by fire, those came right out of a Paul Anderson novel.
The magic system came from Jack Vance untouched, unchanged. And even in the early versions, some of the names are the same. The Excellent Prismatic Spray and so on.
And so ion stones, things like that. And so he lifted all of these elements wholesale, which is fine. That's what people wanted. That's what the game was supposed to be. So that's where Appendix N comes from, is all of the things that Gary Gygax ripped off for Dungeons & Dragons that we have become common parlance in fantasy. Now, Jeffro went through this list of authors and books and wrote a large number, every single one that was listed, he wrote a review of and posted them on his blog. And it was originally a game blog because it was originally about the inspirations behind the role-playing game. But he found, as he went on and on, that the community of role players really didn't care. But all of these other people who were science fiction and fantasy fans were intensely interested in what he was writing, because the new generation, people who are my age and younger, I'm about the oldest person who is on the other side of this divide, we never got introduced to these books. We never got
which is amazing.
People telling us, you should read these.
Because because I'm from the older generation, and everyone I knew had read most of those books. There weren't that many science fiction books back in the pre-Star Wars days.
I've mentioned before that it wasn't until I was honored to be one of a number of people who got to write a bit of the intro for the Jeff was putting out it, and I believe the articles together as a book or something like that.
Are we allowed to talk about that?
Oh, I don't know. Are we?
I hope so.
I hope not.
What are we talking about? Yeah,
we're doing a project. I don't know what it is, but
a teaser. Now we can't talk about it anymore.
One of the things that I thought, regardless of whether or not anything is or isn't going on, was that when I first heard of people talking about him, I was a little puzzled about, exactly what they were so excited about. I mean, not like I thought they shouldn't be, but it was just like, okay, well, and then I began to realize that they had never read these books before. These were the books that I thought of as either I read them or my friends read them. We'd all read them. They're the books we've all read. But there's a few on the list that I hadn't really heard of before. They might have been personal favorites of Gygax, but most of them are pretty solid. They were the books we all read. And I began to realize that wasn't true anymore. And what a wonderful thing was happening, that all these old books were being remembered and appreciated, not only by Jeffro, but by everyone who was reading his reviews or was then picking them up, who was telling their friends about them. And it's just a wonderful thing.
Well, Jeffro Johnson is to this generation what Lynn Carter was to mine. He's the guy who went back and found the old forgotten wonders, Voyage to Arcturus, which no one ever read, and Worm Ouroboros, which no one ever read, and introduced them to the modern audience. So that's why I know books from the 40s and the 60s and from the 1890s is because of Lynn Carter. And the reason why anyone nowadays knows these books that were absolutely the staple reading in the 70s is because of Jeffrey Johnson. He also, by the way, I'm grateful to him because he paid me the finest compliment I think I've ever gotten on a story when he read his review of Iron Chamber of Memory. He said, this book is like an Appendix L book. Appendix N book. Well,
Appendix L is something
Appendix L is the charts where you make up your dungeons by random die throws. Okay, forget that. Appendix N. different appendix entirely. So I was highly gratified because that's about the finest compliment I could be paid.
I'd like to express some gratitude about this time, if I may.
I was going to ask you because I suspect you have some wonderful people to express gratitude to.
Well, first of all, I'd like to express gratitude to Jeff Bezos for the Kindle, because he finally made electronic books viable and took away the concept of out of print, which means that so many of these books are still available. They're available again in ebook editions when no publisher would touch them after Lynn Carter got unfortunately sacked from Ballantine. And a lot of the Appendix N books are coming back to life in the same way. I'm enormously grateful for having that medium to read this stuff in. I'm also grateful on a personal level to Christopher Tolkien. And that's probably going to strike people as odd, but what he did was something that I don't think had ever been done in that detail before. He had access to the personal notes and archives of one of the greatest creative, imaginative writers who ever lived, and he laid it bare. We can see how his father, J.R.R. Tolkien, did things and where he made mistakes and how he painstakingly over many years learned his craft. And that was an inspiration to me, seeing that, and I learned so much from it, and I'm profoundly grateful that he did that work.
That's a really good point. And it's a wonderful thing to think of somebody benefiting from all this effort, because Tolkien put so much effort in, and then his son went to the trouble of carefully documenting it. And it's wonderful to think that it's like we used to talk when I was at St. John's about standing on the shoulders of giants, where you're standing on the shoulders of the giants, authors that came before. And I remember once coming to the conclusion and with some friends that just because you were standing on the shoulder of a giant didn't mean you weren't a giant yourself. But it's wonderful to see the process of one author being lifted up by another author and having their work enriched and making them less of a pygmy because they've now benefited from these ideas.
Yes, it was, I guess, partly to express my appreciation for Christopher Tolkien's work that I wrote, Writing Down the Dragon, which some of you will have heard of, my set of essays on Tolkien's creative process.
Mr. Simon's too shy, but I would like to advertise for that essay book, because I've read it more than once, and I think the insights are crystal clear, well expressed, and very much worth reading if you're a fan of Tolkien at all. And if you're not a fan of Tolkien, then you should become a fan of Tolkien, because he's the greatest. He's the writer of the century. He did successfully what all the other realistic mainstream writers were trying to do with the real world, and he did it with a make-believe world, and he did it better. He portrayed all the nuances of everyday life against the backdrop of a mythological grandeur that is like nothing anyone had ever done before. And the only people who have done it since were people trying to imitate him, and usually not doing it quite right. So I'm grateful to Professor Tolkien for creating the genre of modern fantasy that I write in, as I'm grateful to Hugo Gernsback, H.G. Wells, Jules Verne, and John D. Campbell Jr. for creating the science fiction genre that I write in. Because otherwise, what would I be writing? Historical novels? Garbage? I don't know.
What about some of the rest of you? Josh, Brian, what are some of the authors you look back at?
Well, for me, one of the authors I come back to all the time, I guess he's actually two people, but he wrote under the name Jack McKinney. James Luceno and Brian Daly, and they novelized the Robotech TV series, and they did a way better job with the novelizations than Carl Masek did adapting those anime series. But the Robotech novels, I still have all of them from when I was a teenager. They're held together with like contact paper and packing tape and everything that I possibly can, because they've just been read so much. But I found them at a young age. I think I was about 12 years old, and I just picked up a random one in the middle of the series, and it was literally everything I ever wanted from a story, and it became one of the early bases for the way I write my stories. And then Dan Simmons came along, and Hyperion kind of like refined it a little bit. And John, I learned to write about Christianity in a non-cheesy way in science fiction from. So those are probably my top three: is Jack McKinney, Dan Simmons, and John.
Wait, me, John?
Yeah, you.
Man,
you take you're writing
on your blog for years. You've done it for years before I found out he was a writer.
Your writing was the first thing I ever read that took things like philosophy seriously and not like sort of snide.
One thing I like best about John's books is the philosophy part. The characters talking is my favorite thing.
Yeah, I'll just drop out of the chat now. No, writing my philosophy is quite interesting because there seems to be an anti-intellectual mood to the country, which I think comes from the Morlocks, quite frankly, where they think that the intellect is not going to accomplish anything. That is so diametrically opposed to the John W. Campbell Jr. style science fiction, which was about praising that quality and showing how the future could come into your hands. And the reason why I bring that up is because I'm wondering about tying it back into the idea of gratitude. Have you guys ever read any science fiction stories where the guys in the future are grateful to us? Because usually, A, they don't usually talk about history at all, or B, if they do, they only mention the 20th century, usually to make fun of something that we do wrong.
Yeah, how we cocked it all up for them and ruined everything.
But in fantasy, I think fantasy is based on gratitude toward the past, nostalgia toward the past. When you read Tolkien, you can sense that he's immensely grateful to the literary precursors that he's taking things from the medieval songs and the ancient epics. So my question is, do you guys see much gratitude in science fiction itself, of like where future people are so happy that, the Americans colonized the moon or something? To answer my question, I myself can't think of any.
Maybe Star Trek.
Yeah,
I was thinking that.
What about Starship Troopers by Heinlein? Because those guys seem to have an understanding of the past. They like the traditions. They seem to understand where the Romans and how the Americans did things.
Yeah.
Star Trek.
Star Wars, it couldn't be because it doesn't even take place in our galaxy and it happened a long time ago. It
It's
takes
far,
place in
far
space,
away.
alien.
Far, far
And I
away.
think you're right. It's one of the reasons we all like, and Star Trek was to me like Robotech was for Josh, in that I came upon it at a very young age, originally in the Saturday morning cartoon. And my dad was distributing movies, and for a while he was distributing Star Trek, and I got paid normally $2 an hour, but I got paid $10 an hour, which is 5 times my normal pay, if I did Star Trek stuff for him because I was his expert. And I just loved it. I loved everything about it, and part of it was that it was positive. It was forward-looking. It did have a sense of fun and gratitude. But I don't want to take too much time because there are people here who... So Ben or Brian, did you want to express gratitude for...
And
Well,
anyone hear me? And
yeah, we can.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay.
No, is this...
You can say something then?
If you were
Well, I was
talking...
saying things earlier, but it wasn't. Don't think it was coming through.
Okay.
You're coming through now.
And my avatar isn't popping up on the screen when I talk, so it's just.
I can see it. Our own avatar doesn't usually pop
We
up.
hear
I
it.
see it. Yours is up.
We were not hearing you earlier, but we can hear you now.
Okay, just making sure. That was all I had. I was just wondering if it was working.
He's grateful for a working mic.
Okay. Well, my big inspiration was the obvious one of C.S. Lewis. My parents read Narnia to me as a child, and as I became educated myself and read his other works, I just realized how much he actually knew. You just don't. It doesn't occur to you when you read the fictional stories that he wrote, or when you read the Narnia books, like the Pilgrim's Regress and other philosophical works like Mere Christianity. When you sort of educate yourself into reading the classics and other ancient authors, you start to realize all these different references that you weren't getting when you read them the first time. And just his way of hinting at truths in subtle ways is something I really wanted to do when I started writing. So when Marina Fontaine wrote her review of Nobility Among Us and said it was the same style as C.S. Lewis, that made me very happy, because he was the one author that I read more than anyone else before I wrote my first book, and so I hope he left his mark on that. The other one is obviously, not obviously, but again, I repeat, John with his blog. I first came in contact with his blog through his philosophical discussions, because people kept linking to him from a theology forum that I was part of, and so I eventually gathered up the courage to start contributing to the discussions, and then obtained Jason's announcement of Sci-Fi Journal. So through John, I met Jason, and I got involved in Sci-Fi Journal and got my big break. So I'm immensely grateful to John, and I based my second novel on John's philosophical essays as well. So you have a lot to answer for, sir.
I'm grateful to be married to John. It's really cool.
I disavow all responsibility.
It's not fair. You get Mr. Right.
I disavow all responsibility.
I also went through the process of producing younger Mr. Right, so there's hope.
Yes.
We're April, not so much for the rest of it.
No, well, see, that's our conspiracy that no one's supposed to know about but us.
But Mrs. Right earned me. I did not win her. I just was kind of there fumbling as a flop with chicks, and she like seduced me. I stood no chance. There was nothing I could do.
This is entirely true.
So the other ladies in my life, you had your chance. You could have had
I had a 5-point plan
creepy
for
guy.
his eventual downfall, and or uplift, depending on how you want to look at it.
We discussed this already, dear.
Could I
change the topic to anything else? Yes.
Done. I'd just like to say I'm grateful to everyone here and other people for humoring me in all of this. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
We're very grateful for you, Jason, because none of us would be here doing this without you.
Well, I
You've really
suppose.
done a wonderful job of pulling this together.
But I definitely, John, well, you're not on camera, so you're not going to blush. It's fine. I was certainly grateful to you for humoring me earlier on, giving me a story for Sci-Fi Journal and coming on the old Sci-Fi show for an interview a couple of times and stuff.
When you say I gave you a story, I'll remind you that you paid me for that, right?
Well, that's true.
God, did you pay me? Okay.
And I was so delighted when he had you on the original Sci-Fi Journal show. I thought that was really great.
I just need to tell her cash, delivery card. All this
John, you're confusing yourself with Jack Burton.
But I do appreciate all of you that humored me through all of this.
I have this. You're welcome.
To make it all happen and come together. So,
April, I don't quite understand what's motivating her, but
because it would have been easy to just switch his he didn't know what he was doing.
Put on my blog, which I thought was infinitely funny, which I thought was hilarious. So I'm grateful too. For the gratefulness, I'm grateful for your gratitude. Don't stop. Now.
I got Tom. I got your When Angels Die posted on my blog now, so I'll pass it on to John to put on his later.
I am grateful for that.
There you go.
And I'm also grateful to Paul Johnson, the historian, for a phrase that I think really expresses the spirit of what we need to be, things that we need to be grateful for. He used to talk about uncovenanted boons.
And I'm also grateful for Paul Johnson. So you keep talking, and you're right.
But it's a nice phrase. Say it again. Uncovenanted
boons.
Uncovenanted boons.
Yeah, the things that we receive by a gift that we did nothing to deserve. The civilization that we live in is to us an uncovenanted boon.
It's a grace.
Yes.
It's a grace. Because no other civilization but ours could have invented science fiction. Even the English and the French, while they kind of invented it, they didn't really fly with it. It's very American in its mood, or at least it used to be. Very can-do, very optimistic.
I would like to mention somebody else I'm grateful for.
The original pig that you're named after? I'll stop.
Actually, War Pig was a tank.
They're going to be less grateful for you, dear, if you keep interrupting them.
Well, good. I did not know War Pig was a tank.
Go ahead.
War Pig is an M1 Abrams tank from the video game Call of Duty Modern Warfare.
Awesome. In that case, I have even more respect for you now that you're named after a war machine. That's great.
My
Wikipedia
dad
claims there were war pigs that were used against elephants.
My dad, I grew up in Germany, and this wasn't the person I was going to talk about, but I should mention this. I'm very grateful to my father. He was a tanker, and so he actually drove. He was one of the first. His unit was one of the first units to get the M1 Abrams tank, brand new. So that's part of why War Pig played into the name. And so I'm very grateful to my father for all that he did for me. But the other person I want to thank is P. Alexander. Not to talk about a competitor. Apologies, Jason.
It's fine.
He's the editor of Kursova magazine, which is a brand new semi-pro magazine publishing adventure pulp stories, science fiction and fantasy. And, you know, it's a great magazine, and I've very much enjoyed the stories that are in it, and I've met a lot of the people who are authors in it. And so I want to thank him for starting Kursova.
That's very
I know someone else we need to be grateful for.
good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Since if we didn't have fans, we'd just be a bunch of people writing and telling stories to ourselves. So very grateful for anyone who's listening to this podcast, or I'm young, so I don't have very many, but for any future fans I have, and being a fan myself, I know how
very true.
great it is being a fan. So thank you, fans, in the most typical way possible.
Amen.
Amen.
Man,
Yeah.
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
What
in
about you,
terms
Declan?
of
I don't know if you got to mention some of your favorite authors who inspired you.
inspiring authors, I started out with one mostly. Outside of just going through the entire Bayan inventory of, okay, John Ringo, Timothy Zahn, David Weber, blah, 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 we'll be here all day. The one who actually started me in writing was J. Michael Straczynski back in the 90s with Babylon 5. And I fell into his thoughts on writing, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. And he was actually the first guy I knew who put religion into science fiction, where it's like, okay, wait, the commander is a Jesuit product, and now we've got Dominicans or Trappists or whatever kind of monks we've got on the station. This is kind of awesome. And he keeps insisting he's an atheist, and it's like, no, you're Catholic. I don't care how far you try to run. The church will get you. No.
That's what my wife told me for several years.
It's the Vatican's albino assassins, you know that.
Now, actually, I was thinking about Babylon 5 as well, because I ran into that at exactly the same time I ran into Robotech. And the way they sort of treat their worlds are almost, they're different stories, but it's a very similar approach in terms of overarching and the way things, anyways. But, yeah.
Oh, definitely. And again, it's like, wait, you're allowed to say nice things about religion on a science fiction show? Is that legal?
We're not sure. We'll get back to
Hey, Star Trek did Deep Space Nine, and that's full of religious themes.
Yes, as long as you make up the religion and call
But
them...
Deep Space Nine and Babylon 5 were happening at the same time. I don't know if John and I knew a lot about Deep Space Nine when it first came on because a friend of John's had applied to be a writer there and had asked John for ideas, and John had given him like 20 ideas of possible shows. And so we knew all the characters going in and stuff like that. And originally, Deep Space Nine was just a episodic show like the other Star Trek shows, but Babylon 5 was coming out at the same time. And they switched gears into a serial ongoing story mode to kind of at the same time that Babylon 5 was doing so well with that. So a lot of what was really good about Deep Space Nine was almost an answer to Babylon 5, was inspired by it or kind of came out of the daringness of what Babylon 5 was doing.
Okay. Oh, I think to counter Declan's point, I don't think it's unreasonable that Star Trek makes up their religions, because let's be honest, they make up their science, physics, and economics as well.
Sure enough.
Very good.
Apollo is real.
Well, there you go.
Invert the polarity on the deflector dish.
Now, to be fair, I love Star Trek. I like pretty much all of it. I'm possibly the only person that really liked Enterprise, but
after I found Babylon 5, I kind of had a falling out with it for a long time. But I've been rewatching Deep Space Nine. That's a good show.
It gets really good once the Dominion War kicks off. But and my favorite character in Deep Space Nine is Garak. Well, the two best episodes I think in the series are Garak heavy episodes.
I have two favorite. I really like there was like a submarine style one with space aliens. I can't remember now what it was. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember I knew at the time I'd met the author who wrote it. But my favorite, absolute, without question, Deep Space Nine episode is the James Bond episode with Garak and
Our Man Bashir.
Oh yes,
stuck in the only episode in all of Star Trek where they come up with a really good reason for why they're stuck on the holodeck.
There you go. Yeah. I have to say, my favorite Deep Space Nine episode, In the Pale Moonlight. The whole episode is Sisko narrating a captain's log about how he's brought the Romulans into the war, and flashbacks to sort of tell the story as he sort of tells the story. But I think that's the best episode. That's my far away my favorite episode.
I've seen that episode. I saw them all in the early days. That sounds like a later one. I didn't see it.
It's about season 6, I think. And
I bet I haven't seen it. Wow, that sounds good.
And I liked The Wire, which was like a season 2 episode where Garak's implant that he's been using to keep himself from going insane on the station is wearing out and killing him. And I don't know. They're my two favorite episodes. So anyway,
The reason I like the James Bond one so much is because
fun,
of,
though. That's fun.
you know, because here he is depending on the Cardassian who really was a spy, and they have the back and forth between the tropes of James Bond and the real life of the real spy, and it's just totally charming the way that they do it.
Oh, yes, I know the episode you mean. I like it too.
Yeah.
I like a lot of Deep Space Nine. I thought it was a great series.
They had a lot of
but I love Babylon 5 too. So
yeah, I don't think I don't think it's one or other. I think they're both.
No, they're both great.
We're watching Stargate now, which I didn't see before, and
I
not
like
only
that
is
too.
it a really good show, much better than I had given it credit for, but it does something I've never seen in any other show, and that is almost every episode is a different genre. One will be funny, the next one will be a mystery, the next one will be a science fiction horror thing, the next one will be a political thriller, and they keep jumping back and forth between these different kind of genre of stories, and it makes it really interesting in that you get to like the characters, but you don't know what's going to happen in the next episode as far as what kind of a story you're going to be told. I haven't seen that with a lot of shows. I think that's kind of neat.
I appreciated their sense of like how things build in Stargate. Like the only thing I can really compare it to is the Lensman, where you start off and like they don't even have FTL, and then like by the end of the book they're blowing up stars and whatever. But Stargate, over the course of SG-1 and Stargate Atlantis, like humans go from like Earthlings go from like being a nobody to being the dominant power in two galaxies. Like I think that's really cool.
Also,
don't say too much about what happens after season 6 because we haven't got there yet. But
no, that's okay. I was just going to say, Judgy, Stargate SG-1, episode 100 and episode 200 are absolute comedy gold.
They are amazing.
Is one of those the one with extreme? I don't think
yes, Wormhole Extreme is episode 100.
Yes, we saw that.
Yeah, extreme Wormhole. Oh my gosh, was that funny?
Episode 200. Episode 200 sort of rehashes that idea a bit, and it's even funnier.
We'll look forward to that. And I'm sure that I'd love to go look up episode 100, and because I think I'm missing things. Like I know that some of the people are actually like the crew are appearing on screen and things like that.
Yeah, they are.
But it was hilarious. It was so funny. We were laughing so hard. For those of you who haven't seen it, the premise of the story is that the main characters are travelers on Earth working for the military, going through a wormhole to other worlds, and there's an alien who's living on Earth who they helped before, who can have his memory messed with, so he doesn't remember he's an alien, and he is now writing a Star Trek-like TV show based on the Stargate guys, but he doesn't really remember why he did this. So there's this crazy Hollywood show called Extreme Wormhole that's kind of like a cross between old Star Trek and Stargate, and it's very, very funny.
They just go so wonderfully. They just totally They take their series and just go completely to town on it, making fun of everything silly about their own series.
And the thing that you recognize as being like from Star Trek or other series thrown in the way TV does things, they're both mocking their series and they're mocking TV tropes and TV ways that they solve problems to do things on television, It's just delightful.
Yes.
Speaking of things with numbered episodes and also things that are mocking tropes, I think Galaxy Quest is a tremendous example of our topic for today, because once you strip away all the stuff, the show is real and they're out in the galaxy in a real replica of it. That's the chrome on the story. The heart of the story is these people who acted, on this series. The people who made this piece of science fiction, learning to be grateful to their fans.
Yes.
Yes, very good.
Well, I've heard quotes by, I think it was Patrick Stewart. It may have been, it was one of the I believe the captains from, I don't think it was Shatner, but anyway, one of them said that when they first heard about the show, they were a little put off. They thought it was mocking them. But once they saw it, they loved it. They realized that it was, like a thank you to and from the fans and a in their honor rather than mocking them. And I thought that was, a very wise observation on their part.
And it got them out of that insoluble plot hole in episode 77 too.
That's right. There you go.
Yes. Yes. No, Galaxy Quest is a wonderful movie. I've watched that a few times, actually.
I had to walk a mile to watch that movie. A mile to the theater and a mile back uphill home. So it was well worth it.
The only time I ever did anything like that was, and it's so long ago that the details are a little foggy, but it was I can't remember if it was the second Ghostbusters or I can't even remember what the movie is. Oh, that's so annoying. It was when I was in college. It was some really big movie that came out. It might have been Ghostbusters that we actually walked from the college, like a 2 or 3 mile walk to the theater to see. And at the time, it was just an incredible experience. And I'm really embarrassed right now that I can't remember which movie it was. But it'll come back to me the moment I'm not talking about it. But it was really fun to walk all the way up there and then stand in line and see this. It might even have been Empire Strikes Back. No, excuse me, Return of the Jedi. It was, whatever it was, would have been something that came out.
Careful, you'll give your age away.
I haven't walked for any movies, but I drove an hour in a blizzard to go see Spirited Away. I was wasn't living in a big city at the time, and being a Northeast Ohio person, snow is not so bad, but it's a pretty bad storm. It was a long drive for a good movie, but for a movie. Boy, that killed the conversation.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Jaji brought up a nice point, and it's completely off topic. But one of the nice things with science fiction is you can pretty much do almost anything within the genre. Hey, you want a murder mystery? Yeah, we've got an entire series by J.D. Robb on that. You want horror? I think Brian can talk about that just a little bit. You can do almost any other genre within sci-fi. And I don't mean just Stargate.
Yeah, it's almost a milieu as much as it is that's why I got quiet. As it is a genre in and of itself.
We've lost John and Deji. Uh-oh.
I'm still here.
I really don't even recognize genre barriers. Like Larry, I think of genre as something that neat boxes that booksellers use to make shelving easier.
I used to for a long time, and then when I started watching anime back in the 90s, they're much less a respecter of genres in other countries than we are here in the U.S. And so my experience with anime was like, I was going to watch this comedy show, and then like the last 5 episodes would be deadly serious. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. In fact, anime is almost... it often starts with a lot of real slapstick episodes and then begins to build and then really catches your heartstrings when you don't realize it and comes to a really high dramatic ending.
Yeah.
And we don't tend to do stories that way, but it's a really good way of sucking people in.
My first experience with that was with a Bollywood movie, a musical. Am I online? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. In which in the middle of this show, the youngest of 3 boys who had been separated at birth, and they're all trying to find their families again, cures his blind mother by praying to a saint. And candle flames come out of the, in a very bad special effect, come out and float away and energize, you can see again. And I thought, you would not see that in a normal, soap opera kind of adventure cop show story. What genre is this musical? An adventure soap opera cop story, drama musical, miracle story play, where the comedy really fights at the end. And it was genre is an artificial category used to sell product. It's used so that the fans can find what they want as quickly as they can. But in other countries where they don't have them, it's weird. We stumble across things that just don't fit our preconceived little boxes of preconceptions.
Which is not to say it's bad. You know, I
think good.
when I want a story with a spaceship, I want a story with a spaceship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are both good and bad things. Sometimes we're in the mood for something, but they say that the reason that YA did so well in the over the last 10 years was because there were no genres. The books were all just put together in one place, and a kid who was going to pick up a book about Fault in Our Stars about kids with cancer might also pick up Hunger Games at the same time. And so there was a tremendous amount of crossover between reading subjects, and this led to a tremendous amount of discovery of new books and reading in those areas. And now, of course, if you go into a lot of the bookstores, they split out the YA stuff.
It's one of the things I love about pulp fiction, about the pre-Campbellian stories, Conan and all of his contemporary stories, is that there is no division between horror and science fiction and fantasy. And so, what we would consider a fantasy story has behind it, Cthulhu-esque monstrosities as gods, and science fiction elements will come in. And that's one of the things that is just brilliant about pulp is it is, for whatever reason, Tolkien ascending in fantasy marked a whole lot of really great fantasy tropes that were common as kind of off the board. People don't even think about them anymore. And when you go back and read the fantasy from the 1930s and 20s and 40s, it is astounding how imaginative and awesome it is, and how willing they are to just throw in anything that is interesting and works.
Yeah, I was trying to broaden my Lovecraft horizons this summer. And so I was reading a collection of other people's, sort of Lovecraftian stories. And I ran into one that was set in Hyperborea. And I've never read any Conan stuff, but it was just very interesting that, I wasn't expecting that at all. I was looking for New England, and then, whoa, this is different.
Yeah, there's even a Conan story set in the Cthulhu mythos, the Tower of the Elephant.
Huh.
Robert E. Howard was also yeah. Sorry, I'm saying the same thing you just said. He invented Sagalov, the frog god.
Yeah.
Lovecraft and Howard corresponded and were good pen pals. Basically, had a shared universe going.
Yeah, it was very interesting because as I was doing some research, just how much of what we think of Lovecraft is less Lovecraft and more other people contributing to his seed there.
Right. Yeah, what people in the role-playing games call Lovecraftian is actually Derlethian.
Yeah.
Derleth and Clark Ashton Smith.
Yeah. And back when we were talking about what we're grateful for, I am grateful for those guys.
Yep. I can't imagine why.
Right.
Well,
I just thought of another thing.
Go on, April.
That I could be grateful for. You guys have decades on me, and so a lot more reading time. So I can't think of a whole lot of authors I've read. But one thing, especially since I couldn't read very well, so I was about 10, is my family and my mom especially, they'd read all the time. So I just got books and stories in my head all the time. So I think as just in general, I gotta thank Mom for reading all the time.
Oh,
that's really cool. We tried to do something similar with our kids because our boys did not read. Our eldest son was 17 when he learned to read, and the younger one was 11 or 12. Maybe he was 16. But I just decided when it was clear they weren't learning to read when they were, 5 and 6, that we were going to make sure they didn't miss any important stories. So we've read to them a great deal of the kind of stories we would normally, have wanted them to read on their own. And it's a joy to see them finally reading on their own. So
I think one of the biggest things it does
appreciation
is
of your parents reading to you.
yeah, because I think what it does is for a lot of kids, like once their parents read to them, then once they learn how to read, it's like, okay, go read it by yourself. But then they're trying to like make sure they see, like try and figure out what the words say. And so it's like they go through a sentence, then they look back and it's like, oh, what did I just read? Like being read to all the time, I was able to really get that, see the world and stuff without having to worry about reading when it was still hard. Really gave me a love of stories, and now I'm stuck with stories in my head. So it's a blessing and a curse.
I'm grateful to my father for teaching me to read in the first place and teaching me to love books in the second place. And in the third place, he was the person who gave me a lot of emotional and moral and sometimes financial support to pursue being a writer when nobody else thought I could do it. I just wanted to throw that out there. God rest his soul.
I'm very grateful to my mom who told me stories when I was really little, and they're very imaginative and interesting stories that I continue to draw from. And right now my mom is convalescing from an injury, so if anyone out there is a praying type, if you could pray for her, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Deal.
No, I'm grateful for my parents as well. They certainly never discouraged my love of reading and science fiction when I was younger. So
my dad used to get mad at my brothers for reading too much when they had chores to do.
My parents used to take away my books when I'd misbehave.
My dad did not approve of reading comic books, but I kept explaining to him that the X-Men took place at Salem Center, which was in our town, so this was actually local news.
I want to say, I have to say goodbye because I have to go pop off and get ready for Geek Gab.
That's fine.
We're going to have to...
I was thinking we should start to wrap it up actually as well. But so would you, Brian and Jason, would you like to offer some final thoughts, and then we'll go around the table from there once you two have run off?
Yes, because apparently my mic was cutting out earlier. I'm thankful to everyone here, especially Jaji, my lovely and talented editor, and Mr. Wright, who has been an inspiration and a guiding light for all of us, I think. And
Stop that.
Jason. It's not going to stop getting to it.
John, you're supposed to say thank you.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
It's only getting worse from here.
No, I have to have a wife to keep me civilized. Yeah, quite right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and Jason Rennie for publishing our stories and editing us. Yes, go ahead, Judge.
Happy to help.
All right, I'm going to keep going. Yeah, for being the heart of this endeavor, our conscience, if you will, and always reminding us to be grateful all along, not just on Thanksgiving. Ben for producing beautiful works. I'm reading Beyond the Mist now. It is excellent. Everyone out there should go buy it. Mr. Simon for coining the term subversive and founding this movement to make science fiction and fantasy great again. And April for just your plug-in-ness I haven't interacted with much before, and I'm poor for it. Declan, my beloved, incomparable rival, who sharpens me as iron sharpens iron. And that's off to you, sir.
Neck and neck.
And of course, my in crime, Daddy Warpig. I think that's everybody. And of course, as April said, all of the readers without whom I would be like selling tires or something. I think that's it. Oh, and of course, Lord Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, thanks for having me on. I very much appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you fine people once a month, and I hope you have a good Thanksgiving.
Yes, thank you. All right, we'll let you guys run off to do your show.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Right.
How about everyone else? Who wants to go next?
There's that. I write stories for people to read, and apparently there are a couple people besides my mom who have read them. So I'm very thankful to those guys. I got the best compliment I could ever get in my life this year was someone tracked down my personal blog, which I don't frequently update, but after reading God Robot, and mentioned that he went into it expecting John's story to be the best, which is absolutely reasonable, and he found out that he liked mine way more. And that's like, I've peaked, so I might as well go home now. But just that encouragement is just wonderful.
Josh's story was good,
My
but
story in God Robot.
My
story in God Robot was not that good.
The idea was really clever, but I didn't think it was as
Yeah. Yeah. See, it's
still, Josh's
don't get
story.
ahead of yourself. That was one of my worst efforts.
No.
I'll crush you all. Sorry, I apologize. I was in a transporter accident earlier today. My mild-mannered and ineffectual self is off, and you can go ahead and deal with the rude, cruel version of me that, because transporters split people into
like the crystal
sections. Yeah.
Does he have a goatee? No, John's normally got a beard, hasn't he? So is he clean-shaven at the moment?
The mirror version of me is clean-shaven and thin. And highly emotional.
It's funny. I said earlier about just say thank you, but when I was young, one of the things I learned during a period when I had very little, and was that when someone is grateful to you, you do, or gives you something, you do just have to accept and say thank you, even if it's a compliment. And compliments are hard to take.
That's for graceful people, but me, yeah.
It's kind of like giving them a gift in return for their compliment.
Yes. Okay. Which one are you thanking me? Yes, you're welcome. I had you in mind when I did the thing, whatever it was. Very good. Lay your offerings at my feet. That didn't sound more graceful. That didn't work out very well.
That wasn't quite what I had in mind.
Look, all kidding aside, I am very grateful that people feel grateful to me, but of course, that comes from the God Almighty. Any talent I have, I did not earn. My wife earned her talent. I know people who work hard at being writers, but I was given a gift, and if I can share it with people, fine. But the ultimate giver of the gifts is the one who deserves the gratitude. So, and I am being graceless just because I'm funny, but I don't mean to be. Actually, I do mean that which is not, but I mean it to be. So, who cares what I mean? Stop talking now. But I'll keep talking anyway.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's always so much fun to get together and talk to you guys. And I think it's fun. While we have a lot of grousing we do together, it's nice to also remember some of the good things that inspire us to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I'd like to thank you all, and especially Jason for doing me the incredible honor of publishing my essay, The Making of the Fellowship. I felt I was in company that was way over my head when I saw the issue of Sci-Fi Journal that appeared in.
On the contrary, I thought that was the best part of that issue. That was the best contribution. It took my breath away.
Well, thank you.
There you go. Hey, I don't mind helping. It's nice. I can just find a way to make it my day job. I'll be set.
Yeah. In my heart, I want to see Jason prosper and shine, and I think of things that none of them have yet produced anything of any worth. But maybe I'll have a good idea one of these days that'll actually pan out.
I should say I say that a lot, and it's not because I'm sort of, well, maybe I'm greedy and materialistic, but it's not that. It's just it'd be nice to have time to sort of. There's a whole lot of good ideas that I just 40 hours a week working at another job make really difficult to do.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
I mean, John and I, we would like to be full-time writers, and so I'm laughing because I was told yesterday by a family member that I don't do anything all day.
Which child is getting extra chores?
What I do, but it still was funny. But I don't know. When I was young, when I was very young, I was in a group of people who were all creative in some way, and I really liked the idea that they would all prosper. And some of them have one of them at least is a professional sculptor. And I love this idea. I love the idea of having a group of people and we're all, writers and editors and things together, and we'll all kind of lift each other up as we go forward, in the hope that eventually we'll all find our way. And we would like
can all
to be
buy
able
an
to write.
island.
Yeah, April and I have picked out an island that we're planning to buy. The island.
Oh yeah, when we're
the house is not under the island; it's blown away, which I think is why it's for sale. But they say the house has survived many storms, and you could go up there for a week or two of writing, and nothing would bother you because you couldn't get out until someone came with a boat to save you. So we want to get to the point where
we'll
we
train
this.
the dolphins to come take us,
Yes,
or we can
true.
get the ponies to swim us.
Exactly.
We get the ponies to swim us across back to land. So when we're famous authors, we'll
I
buy
figure we'll
that
put
island.
ponies on the island because what else could live there? But if we could, get Jason to the point where he was editing and making money, we were making money, he was making money from us, and we were making money from him, it would be good for everybody.
My goal in life is to be able to write all the time. So if I can make money off my writing, that's the best thing.
Exactly. It's not that money, even though money is good and fun, and it's fun to have things. It's that we want to be able to spend our time doing something we really enjoy, and we get better at it when.
But we also need to eat.
Right, and we need to eat, and we need to do the other things in life, including have video games or books or whatever it is that people enjoy having. So.
I guess I'll go next with the thankfulness. Take my turn. Well, I'm thankful for being able to be on here, being the baby of the group. I'm glad to find people of the same kind of crazy who like stories. And I was talking to someone at the baby shower, or not baby shower, bridal shower. That's a bit ahead of myself. And I started talking to her. I said something about stories, and she's like, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, this." And then there's this character, and then it's gonna happen this. I'm so mean. This is gonna happen. And she's like, "This is all coming from your head." And I was like, "Yeah." But I sometimes forget that people, the normals as I call them, they aren't quite they don't have all the stories in their head that have to come out. So I'm very grateful to have found people that I can talk to, and I guess Jaji was saying, hopefully we can all kind of work together and build each other up and become successful in whatever ways we can. Thankful, of course, to Mom and to being born. That was a nice thing too. I'm thankful for being able to still being a bit young, still completely adult. I have to pay a few bills, but I still have a lot of time to get my gears going with writing before I have to completely adult on my own. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, I'm grateful for the fans too. I guess that's my 2 cents.
And we're grateful for you guys. I hope you guys all have a very happy Thanksgiving, both you guys here and also any of you guys who are listening.
Yes.
Including
Happy
you, Danny.
Thanksgiving, fans.
All right. Well, does anyone else want to say anything, or on that note, shall we wrap it up?
Well, I would like to say that I'm grateful for Thanksgiving, because what other country has a holiday that's just set aside for Thanksgiving?
No. I have some friends who. I have some friends that celebrate it, but no, we don't really celebrate. We don't have a holiday like that here.
Well, cool. You can share ours.
Okay.
We'll let you.
Hey, I'm just thankful for all of you for putting up with me.
You're welcome.
Nothing to put up with.
There's nothing to put up with, yeah.
You're a blessing to us.
You guys all put up with me, which is amazing, because I'm not a writer and I don't know what I'm doing.
You're the
You're good at administrative stuff.
Get out!
No.
Wait.
He's in the Netherlands.
You're welcome. There we go. I'm getting better.
Writers can't. Well, we can't get through without some. I mean, editors are not just like guys who tell you spelled things wrong. They're the guys who get you organized and get. The writer wants to sit there and write, and we need people who are willing to take the story and go, "Hey, okay, here it is."
Yeah. To create order out of chaos is also part of the creation.
Yeah.
Look what happened to George Lucas when no one would edit him.
Yeah.
That's true. that's true.
Misa, hey Jar Jar.
And I noticed that the new Star Wars commercial for Rogue One looks good.
It does.
So
Yeah.
Fingers crossed on this one.
It's a race. It's depending on how quickly they can get out good Star Wars material before it gets corrupted by social justice warriors and political correctness.
Can I just say, take heart there, because Star Wars exists because George Lucas couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon. So don't worry, when they ruin Star Wars, somebody else will come up with something better.
Well, I think an Italian already made a version of Flash Gordon that wasn't that true to the original.
No, but he's saying that
Yes,
as one thing gets worse, then other things will rise up and people notice these things.
Absolutely true. It's not like the archetypical ideas have run out of steam.
Yeah.
Hey, after
And
they decide
anyone grateful to Star Wars has to be grateful to Flash Gordon.
Hey, John, look at the bright side. If they decide to ditch Star Wars, they just option your books and make them into movies.
Problem solved. So I think it is important. We should thank God that our enemies are as ridiculous as they are. We should thank our enemies for being as ridiculous as they are.
I'd also like to thank God that our enemies are only fighting with words, and we are not at the bombs and bullets stage. And God willing, we will not get to that stage.
No.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
That's one of the things. Here comes another plug. I'm sorry, but that's one of the big themes in Where Angels Die, is that the lead characters have come to fight a war, but not to kill, because if they kill the enemy, they lose, because they're losing souls.
Interesting.
I have to give this a read.
Well, you
All right, folks.
know where to find it.
Yeah.
Ben, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Like one of the reasons why there are all these forces who are trying to stop people from being grateful is that ungrateful people are easy to manipulate. Ungrateful people are easy to force into little boxes by feeding them all these things that they think they deserve. And so gratitude is a real weapon against that, against being controlled, against being forced into doing horrible things. And it's also not just a defensive weapon, but it's also a transformative power. Like, for example, Jean Valjean in Les Miserables, his life of petty crime and despair and in and out of jail for the rest of his life, it was going to end that way. The act of kindness of the Bishop of Dean, or whatever, however you say it, that was a transformative point in his life, and the rest of his life, in which he gave so much to so many people, was out of gratitude for that act. There was one poem I wrote a while ago about something that we don't often appreciate, which is stability and constancy. That the world is stable and things actually can carry on, even though sometimes that feels like a prison. Actually, it's a blessing. If I could just read it here. It's called Sustenance. Each night I lose all that I have. Each day it is returned, preserved with care just as it was, not mangled, scarred, or burned. Each little treasure of my heart allowed another day to grow and play and work and run and learn along the way. The progress of my projects all restored with all their flaws, so I can trace a thought back to its unintended cause. Chance to carry on a conversation with my friends, revive a running joke, or better yet, to make amends. All the thoughtless things I've done, the careless words I spoke, the things I did in anger, the promises I broke. Then again, it's not each day or even every hour, but every nanosecond is by his sustaining power, permitted to engage in further continuity, where I can act with knowledge and responsibility. So I will live in gratitude for this enormous latitude, to choose and act and persevere towards goals both far and near, till life's permissions are withdrawn, and I will face a whole new dawn. But you have to appreciate how the stability of the laws of nature just allows us so much freedom, that so many philosophies have chaos at their bedrock. But undermines everything that we would possibly aim to do. It takes our own agency away, and I'm so grateful that we don't live in that kind of world. That we have a world that we can influence, and people that we can influence, and we can make a difference. We can make a positive difference or a negative difference, and that responsibility is often daunting, but makes life worth living.
It makes me think of the Gothic cathedrals. We may be only carving funny faces on gargoyles to amuse people, but I'm very glad that the cathedral underneath was built soundly and will stand up and hold up our gargoyles.
Excellent.
I think on that note, we should call it a day.
Goodbye, everybody.
I don't think there's a good way
Happy
to...
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, and
Happy Thanksgiving.
And thanks for listening.
Yes, thank you everyone for listening, and to everyone who listens in the future. All right.